Welcome to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump into the episode, I need you to do the 3 S's for me. What is that? First of all, I need you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode of our podcast. Number 2, I need you to share it with your family and friends. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Lastly, I need you to say something. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see from us, what you like, what you don't like. We are open to your suggestions. We want to know everything that you want to let us know about the podcast. All right. Now, get back to the episode. All right. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is healed, whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast on all of your podcast listening platforms. Also, make sure you guys are checking us out on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal podcasting network, where there we have several podcasts, including the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, which you are listening to or watching right now, and the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, which is also there, and also a couple other podcasts. So make sure you you guys are going and checking us out on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal podcasting network. Make sure you guys are checking us out there. Also, our podcast is brought to us by our new school community, which is the Deal to Heal School for Living, which is on the school community platform, which we are using in order to increase our mission, right? Which is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. And so the way that we do that is by bringing you amazing resources and workshops to help you get through everyday life, right? And so we have workshops on forgiveness, on overcoming failure. We have a lot of different workshops that are there. Make sure you guys go check it out. Actually, the link will be in the description, or you can just scan the QR code in our upper corner of our platform if you're watching this. The first week is absolutely free. You guys can go and check it out, see if you like it, see if you like what we have to offer. And if you do decide to stay, it's only $27 a month. And each month you have access to a new workshop and new information. So again, go there. We have a lot of free resources there as well. So make sure you guys go and check us out again at the Deal to Heal School for Living on the school platform. So thank you guys so very much. Today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss Kimberly Stevens. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
No problem at all. Thank you for being here. First of all, thank you, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So, Kimberly, do me a favor. I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, I am Kimberly Stevens. I live in Orlando, Florida, and though my kids are grown, I consider being their mom the most important thing that I've ever done. Some little known facts about me. I'm actually in the Hall of Fame at the University of Iowa for swimming, and we'll talk a little bit about athletics and winning. But I've also gone through what I consider to be Hall of Fame level loss as well. And we'll be talking about that quite a bit today, I have a feeling.
Yes. That is great. Yeah, so we gonna jump right into this thing, Kimberly, because we were talking offline, and I was like, we got to stop talking because we're gonna have to do all this thing, all this all over again, right? And having some amazing conversation. Um, Mainly around the topic of grief and loss, because that is something that we're both pretty familiar with, and those of my audience have heard my story plenty of times. But after the loss of my mother-in-law at the time, and my mom, how I went into depression and things of that nature. After those losses. But from those losses came a lot of purpose, and which bleeds over into the things that I'm doing now. And so, I know you have a similar story, right? So let's just start from the beginning. Well, let's go back. Let's go back a little bit, because who was Kimberly, just growing up, just a kid, before all the trials and all of that came. So who was Kimberly when, just at your youngest, or, where you want to start that story at, just who were you before everything?
Yeah, I like to say I was a swimmer. I was a lot of other things, but by the time I was in high school, I was just a swimmer. And when you're competing at an elite level, you are just that, because there can't be a gazillion
Yeah.
distractions. And I did start out a great swimmer. 100% honesty, I am so glad that they did not have participant ribbons when I was a kid, because I probably wouldn't have been a great swimmer. And there is a story there. So my very, very first AAU meet, which was, I don't even remember what, amateur athletic union. I was 9 or 10, and it was a B meet. So if you know what a B movie is, you know what a B meet is, right? It's the not so great swimmers. And when I tried out for the team, the coach put an asterisk by my name for my parents' eyes only, not mine. But I later found out that even though I made the team, the asterisk meant that they were warning my parents that I probably wouldn't make it very long, because I was not very good. I could not really swim more than a length of the pool. And, you kind of need to swim multiple laps. So I showed up, no talent, at this B meet, and the meet ribbons were like bigger than my head. And I was like, oh, I'm winning a ribbon. I got to win a ribbon, because they were so big and beautiful. And I swam my heart out for the whole weekend. And on the way home from the meet, there were 6 kids piled in the back of my mom's station wagon. And 5 of those kids had giant ribbons. They were putting them up against the windows of the car, and cars are driving by and honking and celebrating. And there was one kid in the middle seat, who wasn't celebrating. That was me. I hadn't won a ribbon, and I was devastated. And as everybody was celebrating their wins, and we got closer to home, I decided I was quitting swimming. And so I announced to my parents, once the car ride was over, I'm quitting. And my parents, because the coach had given them an asterisk to warn them that this was coming, my parents had strategically closed me and made me make a commitment. Hear that word, commitment, to swim for a year. In response to the commitment I made to swim for a year, my parents also committed something. They committed to pay for a swimsuit for me, a team suit, goggles, a cap, pool time. They gave up their dinner hour to drive me to practice. They gave up their weekends to go to these terrible swim meets. And right, so my parents also gave something in commitment. And so we both made an agreement. And so there I was, 10 years old. I'm breaking my commitment. And my parents are like, oh, no, you're not. That's not what we do in life. Right. And thank God for my parents, right? Because that right there was a really big decision. And so I had committed to swim for a year. So I wasn't going to be able to quit. And so I literally went to my room and I was crying. And I remember as a 10-year-old saying, I better figure out something or it's going to be a really long, horrible year.
Yeah.
And so I decided to win. Who decides to win when they're 10? I don't know. I did. I didn't know what that meant. But I made that decision, and my life then looked very different as a result of that decision that I had to continue to make every day to show up to swim practice and miss my favorite TV shows and, whatever else it was that I enjoyed when I was 10. And, fast forward 7 or 8 years, and I became the only kid from that car ride who won state meet, and then was offered a scholarship to swim at the University of Iowa, where I set Big Ten records and became an All-American, and later was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
I love that. I love that. And it reminds me of sort of my story a little bit. And I was going to ask you about that because you mentioned all the other kids that had the awards and things that first time
Yeah.
around when you didn't, and how that became or even added to your commitment, and then have things turned out in the end. So part of my story that I don't even know if I really shared this part on the podcast, but when you talk about who makes a commitment at 10 years old, my commitment came, I don't even know if I was 10, but I was in second grade. And so I was in second grade, and I had this friend who was like the class clown, and I was like his sidekick. You know what I mean? So everything he did, like I was like right there, right?
Yep.
And so basically by the end of the year, I failed. I failed second grade, and I had this moment with my dad, right? And so, back then, we had the answer for whatever those report cards said, whatever those grades were. And so I remember coming into our living room when my dad is standing there, and he has a belt in one hand, he has a report card in the other hand. And so I'm
Right.
Ernest Jr. and my dad is Ernest Senior, right? And so I come in, and so he starts talking to me like, what's up with these grades or whatever. And he starts talking to me and just kind of like, I'm disappointed in you, and having that talk with me, like you represent me, you got my name, you represent our family, and like I'm in second
Yeah.
grade, but I am bawling. I'm like crying, you know what I'm saying? And I'm looking up
Yeah.
at him, and I can see, like tears coming in his eyes, until he just turned his back to me, just like, go to your room. Like I didn't even get a punishment physically, should I say. But that hurt me so much that when I went to my room, I made a decision that day that um, never again will I hear my dad say he was disappointed in me. And never again would, from that day forward, I would spend it making my parents proud. So from that day, became an honor roll student, you know, um,
Love it.
graduated eighth grade, graduated high school in 3 years instead of 4 years, and all of that,
Oh,
right? All of those things. Graduated from college, um, and that was my driving force, like to make my parents proud. But what connected me, what I thought about you, and it is unfortunate, somewhat in my story, that same kid who I failed second grade and he passed, never finished high school. You know what I'm
oh,
saying? And so it's like
yeah.
the the people that sort of have the whatever up front is like, oh, okay, but then you end up surpassing them, and sort of like your story, like those first ribbons, like, oh yeah, you guys may have got these, but we'll just wait, you know what I mean? And then you get to the point in your life
Yeah.
where yeah, you're setting all these records and everything, and it's just like, it's funny how those losses, even then, turns into wins because they drive us to become better than we probably would have become had we had the wins early. You know what I mean? I think that's
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, I was also thinking as you were telling your story, you and I were both very, very fortunate in the same way, in that we had parents
Mm-hmm.
who called us to accountability. And I feel like that is something that is really missing and lacking in society today.
Yeah.
We don't call anyone to accountability, whether we're parents, whether we're bosses, whether we are neighbors.
Yeah.
We're so afraid of hurting somebody's feelings
Yeah.
that we don't call people to accountability. And accountability is what made me rise up and become a
Mhm.
champion. And accountability is what made you rise up and become a scholar, not
Yeah.
just somebody who barely skated through high school. You got through in 3 years
Yeah.
and you did great things. And I did great things. But it was because somebody cared enough to call us to accountability.
Yeah. And I think what just like what you said, you know, if we are afraid to hurt someone's feelings, and so we don't call them to accountability, then we hurt their future. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because now we're kind of giving them a way out early that kind of gives them, as different challenges and things come up in their life, it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, and they don't necessarily have that same drive, you know, in order to say, you know what, I got
100%.
to make it through this, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's great. um, I want to get a little bit more into your story. Fast forward, right? So we talked about, you know,
Yeah.
younger and then kind of fast forward, and you know when we start talking about, you know, dealing with the different losses, which is kind of, you know, what brings us to this platform today, just to talk about how we kind of made it through, you know, some of the losses and even some of the processes that we went through. So your, I don't want to say your first loss, but one of your major losses that you kind of started, you know, telling me about when we were off camera was, you know, losing one of your sons. You know, so kind of
Yeah.
tell us that story and how, you know,
Yeah.
we just kind of walk through that path of, you know, as how things unfolded.
Yeah. I kind of describe it as Hall of Fame loss. And I alluded to that at the beginning. And the only way to really explain the extent of it is to just list them. And
Mhm.
it happened in a span of 25 years. And so, the first real loss for me was giving birth to this wonderfully beautiful, healthy baby boy, only to find out 6 days later he went into a coma. And we rushed him into the children's hospital. I was doing mouth to mouth on him in the car, and we got him there. And they took him back and they put him on life support. And fast forward 9 days, he passed away from a really rare genetic disease. He was born without the ability to process protein. So when my milk actually came in, my body poisoned him. I poisoned him by eating. And that was just, I don't even know how to explain that loss. Um, it was devastating to me, my first child. And I lost so much more than my baby boy, my infant at that moment. I lost my dreams for his life.
Mhm.
I lost his little league games. I lost his wedding. I lost his children. I lost so much. I lost my role as a mother because I didn't have other kids at the time. I there were so many things that I lost that I've come to realize over time.
Yeah.
And then I was told it was a 1 in 4 chance for each child that we had, because both my husband and I carried the gene recessively. And so we didn't try again for children immediately because we wanted to heal a little bit. But then I suffered 3 miscarriages almost in a row. And then I was finally pregnant with my daughter, and we got her to 35 weeks. We did prenatal testing, and they told us she wasn't going to have the disease. And so the last couple weeks of my pregnancy sailed by, and she was born, and she was perfect. And then she was 3 days old, and we got the phone call. And we got her into the ICU where they drew blood and confirmed she had the same disease. And they told us she wouldn't live a week. And thankfully, she survived almost 4 years in and out of the hospital until she received a liver from a 4-year-old child. That liver could make the enzyme she couldn't make, and now she can process protein. And since 1997, she's never looked back. She's just progressed fully. Her name is Victoria Faith, and she's a walking, talking, living, breathing miracle. And that's why I say never give up, right? Because miracles do happen. I've seen them.
So that would put her like 25, 30, maybe around this time?
Pardon me?
That would put her around like 25, 30 years old?
She's 32 now.
Oh, that's
and
amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's just amazing.
I want to highlight something really quickly that you said earlier, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I'm so glad that you mentioned it. When you mentioned that you lost your son, that was one thing, but you also lost so much other things that came along with that. And I think that oftentimes when we think of grief and we think of loss, we think of the immediate thing that we can see right away. But there are so many other things that is attached to it that we don't necessarily think about in the moment. But again, are those losses. And just the fact that a loss doesn't necessarily always have to be a loss of a child or a loss of a loved one. In that sense, it could be the loss of a lot of things that just means enough to you that impact of losing it, has an impact on you. So whether it's the loss of a dream, a loss of a job, a loss of your future, a loss of the future that you saw for your child, and if you're married, I've been married, unfortunately, and divorced. And so the loss of what you thought this marriage would turn out to be. And, so losses can come in many different ways. One of the things that I dealt with this year was a loss of, I want to say a pet, but it was 2 pets, right? But it was monumental to me because one of the things that ever since I was little, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I just love turtles, right? I just had this thing for turtles, and I was just like, oh, I love turtles. And so I always wanted one, never had one. I grew up, I think I was maybe in my 20s, and I just happened to go into a pet store and they had turtles. And I'm like, oh my God. So I buy this turtle. Get the whole aquarium, everything. I buy this one turtle. I have this turtle for like a couple months. Then I buy another one so they can like have, friends or whatever. I had these turtles for 10 years.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
This year, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but this year, one of them, I could tell he was kind of going through some things, I was watching him or whatever, and he died. And so I was like, man, so I took him, buried him or whatever. And then maybe maybe a month later, the other one died. So to some people, it's like, oh, that's it's just a pet. This was 10 years that I had with these turtles,
Yeah, I love my dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just a pet. It's my heart.
Yeah. And like I said, I loved turtles before I ever had one, and so, but just to say that loss comes in so many different ways. And
Absolutely.
I think it was important to me to even acknowledge that, as you had, that there are so many other things that you lost in that moment. And I think that it's important for people to recognize that, you have an immediate loss that usually you recognize right away, but the time after that loss, you begin to process it. And it's so much more that you lost than just the initial thing. You know what I mean? And so, 100%. Just having that awareness for those of us who have grieved and those of us who may be grieving right now, whatever it is, like, it's okay. Acknowledge how you feel, acknowledge what you're dealing with. And it help you process it a little more, And so I just think that that was so important. And I was glad that you mentioned, those additional losses that's attached to that one loss. But I'll let you continue.
So, my my Hall of Fame loss, as I said, continued for 20 plus years. And so once my daughter was healed after her transplant, I lost my marriage. And then I went through a massive custody battle with my children's dad. I got remarried briefly. I lost that marriage too. Then 3 years after that, in 2010, I lost my health. I was diagnosed with breast cancer and went through all of that. And then in 2016, I lost my home to foreclosure. And so when I look at the whole gambit of loss, I'm thinking, wow, I lost financially, I lost relationally, I lost my children, I lost my role as a mom. I look at it globally now. Obviously, when each thing happened, that thing was right in front of my face to deal with. But now, as I look back and I look at all of it, I feel like there was not really any part of my life that wasn't touched by loss of some kind. And talk about deal to heal. I think some of it I'm still dealing with and healing from. And I think that's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
But along the way, I'm learning a lot of little nuggets and things to pull out of it.
Yeah. And I always say, grief is definitely a lifelong journey. It's not something that you get over. And I always refer back to, the grief wheel, right? So they have the grief wheel, which diagrams, the different emotions that you may go through, when dealing with grief. And I always say they call it a wheel for a reason because it never stops rolling. Right.
It keeps coming back around, doesn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes the road that the wheel is rolling on is nice and smooth. And it's just like, yeah, you're just going along. And then every now and then there's a pothole. You know what I mean? And when that grief wheel hits that pothole, it shakes everything up all over again. And so again, it is as you journey with grief, because that's the only way you can deal with it. You have to journey with it because it never goes away. But as you journey with it and you process it as it comes and you give time to it, it becomes easier to roll with the bumps. It comes easier when you hit the potholes. It doesn't throw your whole life off. You're able to say, all right, I'm a little shaken today. Let me process my grief, and then tomorrow things are a little better. And so, I like what you said, because I like to point that out, like that grief wheel. Once you get on it, unfortunately, we don't have a say of when or if we get on it. But if we are, for whatever reason, finds ourselves in that grief wheel, we have to know that it's going to always be a part of you once you're on it. But it does get easier to process if you allow it to walk along with you. When you try to fight against it, I think it's when you find yourself in some spaces, because it's going to come out, right? It's going to come out. And if you suppress it, you can only suppress it for so long. And when it does decide to show itself, it's usually going to show itself at a time that is not beneficial for you. You know what I mean? It's going to be like, you know what?
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yes. You've been pushing me back all this time. I'm coming out. And then it'd be like right in the middle of something, important. You're at work doing a presentation or something or whatever. And then it just shows up, because it can be triggered by anything, that reminds you of that loss, whether it could be a smell or a picture or commercial or, anything that reminds you of that. And then when it shows up, it's like now you're triggered. And if you haven't allowed yourself time to process it, it can definitely throw you off. You know what I mean? So I definitely want people to know that, it's okay. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to go, to feel and acknowledge your feelings. And that's the best way. Just make sure that you're giving time to it, that you're making room and making space for yourself to deal with those emotions and deal with that grief so that it doesn't force its way out. Because again, it'll show up when you least suspect, and it's like, not now, you know what I mean? And it'll be like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I want to talk about, because one of the things you do now, right? And I would definitely want to talk about your mission now because I think it is so
Yeah.
great. With your mission of spreading hope, right? Because with all the things that you've been through, and one of the things that I have learned, and I always say that purpose leaves clues, and when we look back over our
Oh, I
lives, we
love
can
that.
see some of the things that we've been through. And it's not until we find the purpose that we have that we can look back and say, oh, I recognize these things. I recognize these little breadcrumbs along my life that in the moment
Mhm.
I didn't see the significance of it. But now that I'm here standing in my purpose, I see how God kind of aligned all these things to work together and say, okay, now you're here. Now you have this purpose and take it to the world. And so, your purpose that you've come to now is spreading hope and love. And so tell us a little more about that whole thing, the purpose and the mission
Yeah.
that you have now.
Yeah. So, purpose leaves clues are those breadcrumbs that you're talking about. My breadcrumb was a rose, a yellow rose. And so when my son passed away, I remembered that I had been given yellow roses in the hospital when he was born. And so in my grief, my hands were so empty. That was the thing that I felt the most. My arms were empty. They were supposed to be holding a baby, and they had nothing to do. So I planted a yellow rose bush outside my front door. And I took care of that thing, nurtured it the way that I would have a baby if my baby had been there, because my hands needed something to do and I needed something to nurture. Why I picked a prickly rose bush, I don't know, but God does know.
Right.
And that darn rose bush just didn't bloom. And it looked like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. And I nicknamed it Charlie Brown. And we went through months and it didn't bloom. And then all of a sudden it was the end of April. So it's 5 months, 4 months. And there was this little tiny green bud on it. And I remember going, oh, it's going to bloom one day. Well, as I was thinking that, I was also dreading something that comes up the 1st of May every single year, which is called Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my baby. And I just did not know how Mother's Day was going to feel. And I was dreading it. And I was crying about this thing that hadn't even happened yet because I didn't want to go through Mother's Day without my baby. And you know that rose bloomed on Mother's Day for me. And it was just such a precious gift. I literally cut it off of the rose bush and put it in water and just wept and thanked God for seeing me and acknowledging me as a mother on that day. Well, the second rose that ever bloomed on that rose bush bloomed on Father's Day. And my husband and I wept when we saw that. And it was just the double blessing, right? God saying to both of us, I see you, you're parents, and I love you, and never give up. And then fast forward a couple of months, and first miscarriage happened, second miscarriage, third miscarriage, and then fast forward to getting the news that Victoria was going to be healthy. And as we got that news, anticipating her birth, there was a little bud on that rose bush. And I was like, oh my gosh, God's getting in on it. And, my daughter was born and came home from the hospital and the rose didn't bloom. And I thought, wow, God, you missed something. And we ended up going back to the hospital when my daughter was 3 days old. They gave us the diagnosis, told us she wouldn't live a week. We spent 11 days in the ICU learning that we could possibly live with the disease. We got discharged, we came home, and the rose bloomed. And so, success, purpose, God leaves clues, right? Wow, this rose. Well, every Mother's Day, a yellow rose finds me. Every year on my son's birthday, I have yellow roses. Every year on the anniversary of his death, I have yellow roses. Yellow roses find me when I look for them, and when I acknowledge them, when I see them. And so we've started an initiative in our family called Extend the Rose. And it was born when my daughter turned 30. And my daughter's married. She owns a home. She's got a great job. I have 2 granddogs with her. And she's really amazing. And my younger son, who thankfully was not blessed with citrullinemia, is great too. And so we wanted to give back. And so we started Extend the Rose. And that's our family's way of taking that hope that God gave me way back when and taking it back into the hospitals to families who are still in the fight. And so we go into the hospitals now. We do short-term events where we bring dogs and have a pizza party and just do, like a festive day in the hospital. And then we have each kid make a rose petal. And that rose petal is going to travel like a relay of hope all the way to the Rose Parade on January 1st, 2027. So the kids are actually going to have short-term hope and something to look forward to, a huge celebration in this big parade. And in between, we have Children and Families in the Hospital Awareness Month coming up in April. And we're really excited about being able to call attention to children and families who are still in the fight. And one of the things we're doing is we're asking everyone to wear yellow on April 24th. And then upload it into our Roar Gallery. And hopefully we can get more specific information about the Roar Gallery in the link. But the whole purpose is that we're taking pain that became purpose, and we're extending it back out to others. And, we were talking before the show started that I truly believe that the only thing that grows and expands when we give it away is hope. And if you want to have more hope in your life, give some away. I promise it will come back.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So let's talk a little bit more in detail, because you mentioned to me when we were talking offline about these cards, that you
oh
guys,
yes,
and also how it connects to your book. So let's talk about those 2 things. And first, let's talk a little bit about the book, and then how the cards are significant to the book.
Yeah, of course. So everything that we've created, the organization is called extendtherose.org. You can find it online, extendtherose.org. And what we're trying to create is a vehicle to give away hope. And so there's all kinds of initiatives on there, and the card and the book are just one piece of it. But if you go on extendtherose.org, there is a little card here. And this card says, "This rose is for you." And we give this card away to parents who have kids in the hospital with a yellow rose. And on the back of the card, it tells my story really, really quickly. And it literally just says, a rose bloomed for me on Mother's Day after my son passed away, one on Father's Day, then again after Victoria came home from the hospital. But then it says, today this rose carries that same message to you. May it remind you, even in the hardest moments, your love matters, your fight matters, and you're never alone. And that's what giving away hope is, right? Is reminding people that what their fight is, what their grief is, what it is, matters. And it doesn't just matter to them, it matters to you too, because you care about them. It matters to God. and
Mhm.
they matter. And that's like the most important thing that we need to hear when we're struggling with loss, whatever the loss is,
Right.
right? And if somebody really truly loves us, um, I believe they love what we love.
Hmm.
They hurt when that thing, whatever it is that we love or loved,
Yeah.
has been lost, right? And they acknowledge that for us. And that gives us enough strength, hopefully, to just hold on for one more day and never give up. And so everything that Extend the Rose does is about never give up. And, so I wrote this book. It's called Altered, Finding Hope Through Grit and Gratitude to Never Give Up. Never give up. And this is just a memoir of my story and how I dealt and how I got through. But what we do in the hospital is when we give away those yellow roses and this card, we always tell people if they want to read the full story that they can read my book and they'll see the full story. So the full book, it's on Amazon if you want to buy it and actually
Hmm.
read the print, but it's also on our website, extendtherose.org, and you can just download the PDF and you can read the full story. And I truly believe, as I said, everything we're building is about giving away hope and being authentic and honest about how hard it was for me during certain times on Mother's Days, right? Um, is just encouraging other people who are hurting that they're normal. And again, when we give away that kind of encouragement, it comes back to us. And when it comes back to us, that's healing and that's fulfilling. Deal, heal, fulfill,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you mentioned Mother's Day, and that's always been one of those things with me as well. Because of course,
Yeah.
especially after losing my mom. So in May 1st is my birthday. Then my mom's birthday is May 15th. And then Mother's Day is in that
Oh,
same month. So
so May is a hard
yeah, just
month.
like all the May is like, But again, as we allow ourselves to process our grief and all of those things, that it gets to the point now where I can celebrate May, from
Yeah.
a joyous space, knowing that, hey, my birthday's coming up, which is cool. My mom's not going to be here for my birthday, but I still can celebrate. Her birthday comes in May and I can still celebrate, the woman who she was and what she meant to me. And then Mother's Day itself comes, so all of these May dates, because I've allowed myself to deal with the grief and everything, that now
Yes.
it's a joyous occasion again, and I love, the purpose that you guys have. I love the roses. I'm going to make sure that I'm make sure that I wear yellow, and
April
I'll put
24th.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I'll make sure I put that up, and also I would make sure definitely I put all the links to the book, the website, all of that will be in the description so that we can share that,
Beautiful.
because I love your story so much, and I love
Thank
the
you.
work that you're doing, and just the impact, and just thinking about, that rose and that the impact that it had on your life, but now how you've also taken it, to impact others, and yeah, I'm just excited. I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited for the future of you guys. You shared some things with me that you guys are working on, or some ideas that you had, and I'm very
Yeah.
looking forward to those, to
I'm
see how
so
those play
excited
out.
for those.
Yes, yes, and when all of that works out and everything, we're definitely going to have you back, to talk about it
Yay.
and talk about that experience and impact. I definitely want to hear it. Um, I want you to have the last word, right? So first of all, let me say again, I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank
Um,
you.
I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, or um, I don't know, inspiration, however you feel, right? I want you to leave us
Okay.
with something. Um, And I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of think about, what you want to say. Also, again, leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature where we can find, you guys, for those that are listening to the podcast so they can get that information. So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. To my audience, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out or checking our website out, dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org, where you can find more information about a lot of the things that we have going on. So yes, make sure you guys are checking us out there. Also, make sure that you guys check out my personal website, which is earnestjamesspeakslife.com, or should I say my personal speaking website, which is earnestjamesspeakslife.com, that you may invite me out, have me come out to speak or to hold a workshop at your school or organization. I'm definitely open for that and looking forward to being able to do that. Again, that's Earnest James, speakslife.com. Also, ebooks by E. James. So I know over the years I've talked to you guys about the ebooks by E. James, and I've had all my ebooks available at that website, which is ebooksbyejames.com. But by the time you're seeing this, that website is no longer up because we've taken it down. However, the ebooks are still available. They are now available for free inside of our school platform, which is the Deal to Heal School for Living, which we talked about earlier. So when you go to the Deal to Heal School for Living, like I said, that first week is absolutely free. You can go in there and download all the ebooks if you want while you're checking us out there. So again, go to no longer ebooksbyejames.com, but go to the Deal to Heal School for Living, and you'll be able to get all of those ebooks for absolutely free. Also, check us out at our inspirational t-shirt line, which is Deal to Heal Tees. That's Deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go there and check out Deal to Heal Tees. Check out our inspirational tees that we have there. And also check out our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and also one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast as well. So make sure that you guys go and check that out. Also, one of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of over the last couple of years, to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly talking about everything surrounding forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world. And just really having these conversations about being able to learn to forgive and to love. And so those workshops are, again, bi-monthly, the second Saturday of every month. Generally, we try to stay on that schedule. So it's the second Saturday of the month, but it's bi-monthly. So whenever you're listening to this, either a workshop just ended or is one coming up. So make sure you go to forgivenessmission.com to get more information and to register for our next free virtual workshop on forgiveness, which is absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So make sure you guys go there and check that out. Also, I mentioned a little bit earlier that we have started and released our very own nonprofit organization, which is Deal to Heal the World Incorporated. Again, with that same theme of Deal to Heal. So it's Deal to Heal the World Incorporated. We definitely are taking donations to help us to do more work into the community and bring programming and opportunities to the community absolutely free to them. But it does cost for us to be able to do that. So if you want to make a donation to the Deal to Heal the World Incorporated, the link will be in the description. Make sure you guys go there and check us out, and feel free to donate as well. And also, we mentioned the Deal to Heal School for Living. If you scan the QR code in our upper corner, that will take you definitely there, as well as the information will be in the description. So, Miss Kimberly, once again, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for sharing your story with us and your expertise and your experiences. I really love your story, and I really appreciate you being here. I want you to, excuse me, I want you to have the last word. So the floor
Thank
is
you.
yours.
So I just want to say thank you again for having me, but also how much I respect and love what you're doing, because essentially we are standing for the same thing, right? We want our grief to be healed in order that we can live fulfilled lives. And I'm seeing you do exactly what I'm doing, is you're giving away hope. You're encouraging people that they can deal in order to heal, which will bring them to a fulfilled life. And I'm so grateful that I'm beginning to live a fulfilled life as I see the purpose in my pain. Not that it justifies my pain or takes it away, but it does provide a context for me to create beauty from the ashes that have been in my past. And so for anybody listening who doesn't really know yet how they can give away hope, I have a really simple way. And that is to go to our Roar Gallery on YouTube. And the Roar Gallery is literally just, think of it as a bank of hope. And what do you do at a bank? When you have money, you go and you put it in. And when you need money, you go and you take it out. Unlike a bank, the Hope Gallery does not lose its value when we take hope away, because hope, as we know, grows when it's given away. And so the Roar Gallery, which is on YouTube, is a place where anyone can go. You can upload a short, a 59-second message that essentially says something hopeful or declares that you have hope after a loss. Or you can actually come on our Roar Stories podcast and you can share something you've overcome. And then those stories will live in that gallery forever, whether they're short or long. And then anyone who's struggling can come and watch those stories when they need hope. And as long as people keep making deposits and sharing their stories, we will be able to share hope with the world. And I'm so excited about this. We're on a mission for 1 million roars. And so be one, because your roar could make a difference. And the whole idea is that anybody having a bad day, especially someone who might have had a long stay in a hospital, can go on a YouTube channel and just scroll and see the message. Never give up. We're cheering for you. Hope is a team sport. Never give up. And like I said, when you're part of that gallery and you give away that hope in that way, it's going to come back to you, because you're going to be able to go back to the gallery and see people reacting to your story and going, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that today. Thank you so much for sharing it. Right? And that's the beauty of giving away hope. And you're doing it here on Deal to Heal. We're doing it with Extend the Rose. And now anybody listening, you can do it too, really simply on the Roar Gallery.
I love it. I love that so much. Man, we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.